All right, so Wes Craven. This movie was pretty early on in his career. So he was a college teacher in upstate New York, trying to get a book happening. Wasn't happening. Decided to move to New York.
Downstate.
Became a messenger for some joint that made movies. He had a friend of his, named Sean Cunningham, who would later go on to make Friday the 13th, side note.
Ooh.
But his mate had been given a small budget to make a scary movie and was asking him for ideas. What they ended up coming up with was this movie called The Last House on the Left.
What began as a birthday party ends as a nightmare.
His second movie then was The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh, yep.
He did some TV movies like Swamp Thing, but basically while these were doing fine, he just wasn't making it. Like, he didn't get a paycheck for 3 years. This is the part of the true Hollywood story where it's like, Wes fell into a slump and found himself addicted to drugs. And he's like, all right, I got to clean my shit up. No more of this. Anyway, so he gets this idea, inspiration strikes, he writes a script. It's 1981. So there's two elements that informed this great idea that we ended up with. The first being a few articles he read that had popped up separately, which is fucking creepy. Separately in the same newspaper over, I don't know if it was months, years, or days or what, but 3 separate articles about 3 separate occasions, no mention, no referencing of each other in these things, of people dying in their sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently one of them was hardcore, and basically it was an Asian immigrant family. This kid was terrified of sleeping.
That's got to suck.
Yeah, he's like, I can't go to sleep because I'm going to die. And his parents gave him drugs to sleep, and he wouldn't take them. And then eventually he slept and he died. In his room, they found all the pills that he didn't swallow and a coffee pot. And this man, he died. Like, and there was no medical conclusion as to why he died. Whoa. He just died. Yeah, it's fucked up. The second part, so that's the main part, I guess. But the second part, in terms of Freddie himself, he had this memory as a kid of being at home and hearing something outside. He lived in an apartment building. Yeah. Well, actually, why don't I let him tell this story?
When I think about 7 years old, I was just about to fall asleep, and I heard this shuffling down the sidewalk and mumbling. And I went to the window. I was in a second-story apartment with, living with my family in Cleveland, and there was this man that looked pretty much like Freddie ended up looking. He stopped, and he happened to look directly up into the window and right into my eyes. Now, I don't know how he knew to stop, how he knew a kid was watching, but somehow he did. And it just stopped my breath in my throat. And I backed away from the window with him just staring at me until he couldn't see me, and stood back there in the shadows and counted, And I don't know what I counted to, 100 or 200 or whatever, but I didn't hear him, and I thought he must have gone by now, but I would have heard him, but he couldn't just be standing there. And I went back, and he was there, and he just went, like this with this big leer. And then he sort of capped himself by starting to walk down the sidewalk, still looking over his shoulder at me, and then turned the corner and walked towards the entrance of our building, which was out of my sight. But so I remember running through the house, dark house, and going to the front door and putting my ear to it and hearing the door downstairs open. Whereupon I woke up everybody in the house, everybody in the apartment. By the time I had awakened everybody in the stir, this guy had disappeared. But that memory became the essence of Freddie, because that guy, whoever the hell he was, enjoyed scaring the shit out of a kid.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, pretty creepy.
Yeah. So those two elements come together. He called the character Fred Krueger because there was a kid at his school that bullied him named Fred Krueger. That means there's someone out there named Freddy Krueger, the poor bastard, that just wouldn't be taken seriously in any situation, or taken too seriously in the wrong situation. The colors of the sweater, apparently, from a science point of view, those two colors together are hard for the brain to take. They're not pleasant or something.
Aren't red and green
Christmas?
No, there's a word for primary opposing colors.
Oh, opposites. Yeah, I think they are.
Also, red and green together make brown.
Yeah, you put them all together, they make brown.
Red and green makes brown. Freddie also makes things brown because you shit yourself. He's the brown maker.
Nightmare on Elm Street 7. the brown maker. Anyway, he writes the story, pitches it all over town. As usual, at this point in the story on every episode, everyone says no. Disney was interested and wanted to make a preteen safe version of this movie, which I have no idea what that would be. Just take out Freddy. It's just a school drama. Yeah. Make it a musical, a high school musical.
Yeah, with Johnny Depp.
That would actually work pretty well, wouldn't it? Paramount nearly did it, ended up passing because they were making a movie called Dreamscape at the time, which I haven't seen, but judging by the name, apparently it's thematically very similar. Potentially aesthetically very similar, very surreal, I suppose.
How did that one pan out?
I don't know. I've heard of one of them, and it ain't that. A little company called New Line Cinema decided to give them the green light.
And they were a little company.
They were in those days. Primarily, they were a distributor, not a producer. They'd produced a few things, but this really turned it around for them. It became the house that Freddy built.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. But being that they weren't big-time producers, they had to get independent investors. And so they started, the initial budget was $700K, then they got it to $1.1 million. And apparently it was just a few individuals in like Europe or something.
Was it the Queen?
Could be.
Go on.
So we talk about the casting. So Freddy was initially going to be played by one David Warner. I don't know a lot about him. Do you know him?
No.
No. But he had to drop out due to scheduling. And then they really couldn't find a guy. And initially they wanted a big dude. They wanted to be a big, scary dude. But a young man named Robert Englund came across their audition process, and he went all out on this shit. Not a huge guy and a little bit younger than what they wanted, but he was just being a mad weirdo. And on the way in, he dipped his finger in his ashtray in the car and put ash under his eyes and slicked his hair back. And I think he read between the lines that this guy was they say he was a murderer, but he's kind of a pedo. He was channeling that energy at his audition. Good. You know, like, this is the guy. This is the guy.
Scaring at me.
Yeah.
Scaring at me?
He's scaring at me. The Nancy, the final gal, he wanted someone non-Hollywood. They had an open audition for 200 actresses. Obviously, Heather Langenkamp got it. But rumor has it that one Demi Moore, Courtney Cox, and Jennifer Grey all auditioned. She would have been good.
Yeah.
Did you hear about Charlie Sheen? He was up for the role. They say he wanted too much money. But he said, no, I didn't get greedy till a few years after that.
I hadn't formed my expensive habits.
Yeah, exactly.
At that age.
Exactly. And Johnny Depp wasn't even acting yet. So this is Johnny Depp's first picture.
First time behind the camera.
Yeah. So he was in a band, and his friend was an actor in the movie, a small role. I can't remember who it was exactly, but he was like, hey, Wes, I got a guy. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, okay. And he sent him a headshot, and he's like, oh, he looks like a junkie. Like, he looks gross. And he asked his daughter, like, oh, which one would you get? Him, he's hot. And it was Johnny Depp.
How can you listen to television and hear your records at the same time? Miss Nude America's going to be on tonight. Well, how can you hear what she's going to say? Who cares what she says?
You know what they did then? They got these people, got them, arranged them in front of a camera, acted out various scenes, shot them, cut them together, bish, bash, bosh, got herself a movie, Rap Party, The Viper Room.